Hi everyone and welcome. In this week's video we are going to be looking at some really fun stuff with some parallax effects. So whether or not you were around when I did this website that we see on the screen right now, this was done for my building a responsive website from scratch video. You do not have to watch those videos to see how this works. It's a standalone video. One of my subscribers, Conquered.js, asked me how we could add a parallax effect to this site right here, this hero area that we're looking at on the screen right now. So I'm going to add it in there. If you do want to look at this site, let's just take a really quick look at it. If you do want to follow along or build this site or see how I built this site, you can go and check out that series right now. And when you're done with building it, then you can come back and join in and adding a parallax effect. But again, this parallax effect should work on absolutely any site that you do. So I haven't done very much. I've just done a few little things since I finished that last one. So if you are joining me from previously watching that series, one thing I've done is I've added this Parallax BG class to my home hero area. And all the way down here at the bottom, I've added jQuery from their CDN, just linking over from there. And I've added this link to parallax.js, which is my own file. And I've created that file, but it has nothing in it yet because we're doing all of this from scratch, and we will be using jQuery to make this work. But before we get into the jQuery, you may not need it, and having to do some JavaScript, it's an extra dependency, you know, it slows things down just a little bit. So one thing you can do to get the most basic style of parallax effect is just doing a background attachment, okay, that's right here, background attachment of fixed. And background attachment is the oft-forgotten background property, and nobody ever uses it except for this, I think. The default for this, by the way, is scroll. Scroll is what it is, that's the default property, and fixed is what you change it. If you make it fixed, it will do this, where it just locks the background picture in place. So that is definitely a parallax effect. Parallax, it's not right. It's the right style. It's in the parallax idea, where real parallax is when things are moving at different speeds, but this gives us a nice way of doing it without having to actually add in any JavaScript. So if that's what you're after, well, there you go, you're done, and nice and easy. But you know, that makes for way too short of a video, and we want to do some more fun things than that. So I'm gonna come in now and start playing with some JavaScript. And I'm going to do it for the background image here, and I'm also going to do an effect for this box right here. And the reason I want to do that is just to show two different ways of doing it. They're both actually really similar to each other, but this one's dealing with a background image, and this one's dealing with the positioning of a box instead of the positioning of a background. So let's jump right into it. We'll come up to my parallax right here, and we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to check for my window. And when my window scrolls, and I always write school instead of scroll, we want to do a function. So when my window scrolls, we will do a function. And that function will be, we're going to run parallax. And what is parallax, you ask? Well, parallax will be this function that I'm creating right here. So function parallax. And now there's a couple of things I'm going to do. The first thing I need to do is track my screen as it's scrolling. So we're going to create a variable. I'm going to call this one wscroll. Window scroll. And this is equal to my window scroll top. And just to show you what this is actually doing, what this variable is storing, and to just make sure that everything is actually working, let's do a little console log. So console log. And for now, let's just do a nice little console log of hello to see if things are working. Inspect. Jump over to the console. And when I scroll, hello should just start going up there. There we go. And the farther down I scroll, the more hellos are coming. So every time the window scrolls a little bit, we get more hellos. Super. Now, that's kind of useless though. So to show you what this wscroll variable is storing in it, let's have this show us wscroll instead. So I'm going to save that. And now when I scroll, you can see that it's pumping out some numbers. And what that is it's how far down I've scrolled. So if I start moving back up, it should start going back towards 0. There we go. So if I go down or up, it's keeping track and storing in it how far away from the top of the window I am, which is really good because we're going to use that information to modify how things are moving. So I don't need that console log anymore. Everything is working nicely, and we're going to still want this. Let's close it for now, but we'll jump back in there after. And what I want to do now is I want to select my Parallax BG. So if you remember, I mentioned that in here I'd added Parallax BG to my home hero. I could just select my home hero, but this could be an effect that I want to use everywhere in the site. And I think it's more interesting if it's not more interesting, it's more useful having something that can be reused anywhere I need it instead of being locked into one class or one part of my site. So Parallax BG, it lets me just apply it anywhere I need, anywhere I have a background that I want to have this parallax effect with. And the reason I'm not just calling it parallax like this is because, as I mentioned, I do want to have two different parallax effects. If I was just having one, I would probably just call it parallax, but I'm going to have a background parallax and a not background parallax. We'll figure out the name for that one once we get there. So I'm selecting my parallax background, and then what I want to do is I want to modify my CSS properties, and the CSS property that I want to select is my background position. And with background position selected, I want to change it. So what do I want to change it to? I want to change it to, and let's just go and look at what my background position already is on there. Background position is currently center, so it's just perfectly centered on the screen. I want to keep it centered this way, so I want this to always be in the middle. It's the up and down position that I want to change. So to do that, I'm going to write center space plus, and I'll explain this in a bit more detail in a second. W scroll, and I'm gonna change that after, but let's just make sure this is working. So my background position property is going to be changed, and it's going to be center, and I'm putting the space here because, say we come to here, so if I did, I could do center top or center left is more appropriate in this case. So center left, now it won't be left, it's going to be a pixel value, but we just separate them with a space. So if you are putting in two properties. So here, I'm just making sure I'm including that space or it would cause us some issues. So it's going to stay centered this way, but this is going to change up and down. So let's save this and then scroll and see what happens. Well, we can see my background is moving, but that's not what I thought would happen. That's really strange. It should not jump. It should just sort of scroll. Why is it doing that? Let's just do it. The whole thing I want to do here is multiply it by something like 0.5. And is it? It's still yeah, why is it doing that? That's a weird one. Let's see if I think I know why. It looks like it's transitioning, and it's been a while, but yeah, I pretty much do this on all my sites. And in this case, it's caused a problem. I have my universal selector here, and I've put a transition on it. So what it's doing is it's actually causing that change in position to transition over 250 milliseconds instead of just happening live. So we need that not to happen. I don't want to take it off here because I'm using it for so many things. I'm using it for my button, and I'm using it for these, I think. I'm probably using it for those two. And the buttons that are there, it's mostly my buttons that I'm using it for, but I don't want to overwrite it just because if I take this off, I'd have to go back through my code and fix it everywhere. So it's much easier to just fix it on my home hero. Or should I fix it on my parallax? I should fix it on my parallax because I'm going to have two different parallaxes, and this is going to affect both of them. Where does parallax get put in? It's kind of a generico one, so I'm going to put that just after my buttons. Parallax. Okay, so we have parallax BG. And I want to change my transition. I don't know if none would work, probably, but let's do, not inherit, the other one that shows with an I. Initial. This should just reset it back to the initial property, which I'm guessing is none anyway. Let's just see, there we go. So that works. It's not doing that weird jumpy thing anymore. It's just working. So the reason that right now it's kind of useless what I've done now. I've added a whole bunch of JavaScript just to do something I could do with CSS because it's not actually moving. It's locked in position. And if we go and we look at what's actually happening here, let's move this up a little bit and move this down because we can't move that down. So we see it here, my section, and background position, center 0 pixels. So it's staying centered this way, and what it's doing is 0 pixels, and as I go, the position of it is moving because this number is equal to my W scroll, which is equal to how far down I've scrolled. So it's keeping the top of the picture exactly in the same place relative to my window. So right now that's kind of useless. This isn't really what I want, but we can do some math on this. So multiply that by 0.5 to start with. So now when I scroll down, it should move at half the speed. So when I scroll down, it should move it. There we go. So you can see it is moving, but it's not moving at the same speed as the rest of my, everything else. And you could, of course, play around with this. This could be 0.75, so it should move just a little bit. That will slow it down even more. So now it's moving a lot slower. It's a bit more subtle. Actually, that's probably more of what I want, but we could also make this 0.25 and save that. And now it's really subtle. So it's moving at almost the same speed that I'm scrolling down, but it's pretty obvious that it's not quite the same. The text is sliding up over the picture a little bit. So I'm going to stick with the 0.75 for now on there anyway. And I think that, I think that looks pretty good. So you can see that it's moving, but it's moving at its own speed right now. And that's the basic parallax effect. That's what you're going to see on most places where you're changing the speed that it's scrolling at. And for me, if it's a background image, this is the easiest way to do it. It's just pretty much one line of jQuery with a little variable stored in there. Really nice and simple. It's a really subtle effect in this case, but I think it looks pretty nice. I'm going to stick with that. Now, I did mention that we want to do it with a second box, so I'm going to take a look at this, and instead of doing it with a background image, I'm going to do it with an actual div, pretty much. So let's jump over here, and that was my home about. Now, is it my home about or my home about text box? Let's do an inspect. I haven't worked on this site in quite some time. Home about, it's my text box that I want to move. Okay. So home about text box will get my parallax, what should we call this one? Parallax box. I'm not very original. So we'll just add a little parallax box on there. We'll jump over to my styles and just add that in here. Dot parallax box. Did I do it with 1 or 2 hyphens? 2, good. And so let's come in here and add in what I need. So that will work. Now I also want to select my parallax box. And just like before, we want to play with the CSS a little bit. And what we're going to select in our CSS this time is the top property. Top. And this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated in this case, only because here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Top. Oh man, I was playing around with this a lot when we were doing it. Padding. My top is currently -5em. So I believe, let's just put that to 0 and see what happens. Yeah. So I'm using that to pull that up like that, and I want to keep this in the same position. So just to show you sort of what I'm talking about, I want to be changing that top property, and that's what's going to get it to scroll at a different speed. But to do this, just to show you, top, so we're going to take our W scroll again, and this is probably going to screw everything up. Let's do that, plus pixels, just to show you sort of what it's going to happen as soon as I start scrolling here. It should, oh, I've just lost it completely, and yeah, I sort of screwed everything up. Okay, so that's not going to work yet. Let's just multiply that by a small number then times 0.525. So we can see it, but as soon as I scroll, it's going to disappear. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we can see that's working. There we go. It's working, yeah. It's scrolling at its own speed. The only problem is, as soon as I scroll down a little bit, it jumps off, and then it starts working. So what I need to do is I need to set it up so it's always going to be at the right spot there. So my W scroll is going to start, let's just go look again, that was -5m. So -5 is what's pulling it up. So we need to start it there. So we're going to start with a -5. Yes. -5 plus, plus the W scroll, but this will be an M. So let's see. Let's see if this works. I think this is going to work. Let's see if this is going to work. Fingers crossed, guys. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Oh no, where'd it go? Oh no. Look at it's going farther. Wow. Okay. Now if I come out, there it is. Oh, it just, okay. So just so we can see what's happening, we see it here, there. When I start scrolling, I'm going to go really slow. It's taken off. It's just taking off like a rocket. Woof, it's gone. So you can actually see as soon as I get to hear my scroll bar, just like it's so far down, the farther I scroll, the longer my site becomes. So 0.25 is way too much in this case, and that makes sense because I'm doing -5 plus this number, and that number gets big really fast. So it's getting really big really fast. So we're gonna have to make this smaller. What if I make this 0.025? Save. And there we go. That's better. It's not quite, it's still too fast because it's sort of covering some of my text here and then hiding behind there. Not quite what I wanted, but it's on the right track, and it's always starting at the same spot, which is really important. So that -5 is definitely working. So it's -5 plus 0, because my W scroll and I'm all the way at the top is 0, M. So it's just -5m. So when I'm at the very top of my page, it's there. And then it's as I start scrolling down, it's just adding, my top is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if 0.25, let's try a 1, just take my 0.25 and make it half again. And let's try now. There we go. There we go. And it's still going to cover the text probably a little bit, but we could slow it down even more than that. 0.5. And I know this number is getting ridiculously small, but that's just because my W scroll number is so big. It's just what's going to happen, actually. And there we go. That's more of what I wanted to do in this case. A really, really subtle effect where that box is just moving. And in a way that's, with this background moving at one speed and this moving at a different speed and everything else, it sort of does create that layered effect that's kind of neat. Where everything's moving at its own speed depending on where it is. Another nice thing, I wouldn't do this, I want to keep this really, really subtle. I don't want that really jumping around or moving really fast because it's going to look weird, and if someone's reading it a little bit as they're scrolling, you don't want it moving too much. Kind of nice is that it stays in the viewport just a little bit longer than it would otherwise, and I guess you probably want someone reading that, right? If it wasn't Latin. If that was your actual About You section. And so I think that looks really, really good. And of course you can play with that number to get something a little bit different. Let's even just make that 0.8 to make it a little bit faster and see what happens. That's not too bad either. And you can see now it's just, you get this whole element that's just scrolling. Let's make the page a little bit bigger, because there we go. Just so it's sticking off the side a bit. And it's just this box. I think that's too fast actually right now. But it definitely grabs the attention. You see that box moving at a different speed than the rest of the content. And it creates sort of a fun little, let's move that back down to 0.5. I think that looked better. Yeah, I like it more when it's this nice little subtle effect if you're going to do it. I don't want it to be this super obvious, like in your face type of thing. Anyway, there you go. There are two different ways of adding in a parallax effect, either with a background image or with a div itself or whatever other element you'd want to move at a different speed. And I hope you like both of them. They're both probably have their own unique times that you might want to use them. If you try doing this on your site and for whatever reason it's not working, or you're just getting a little bit confused by all these negatives, and the math is kind of a bit weird until you wrap your mind around what's going on. So if you get kind of confused or something's not working, leave a comment down below, let me know, and I'll try and explain it in a bit more detail. And of course, if you didn't build this site and you want to, go check out that series. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. It helps me out. It lets me know that you like what I'm producing, and it just, nice to see, and it's nice to be appreciated sometimes. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. What are you waiting for? Just, subscribe now. Click on the picture right there. It's me, and I really would appreciate that. It's a new video every single Wednesday. What are you waiting for? Subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys next week.